Roger and Skye watched as a boat fast approached them. They were both rather nervous. As Roger stated, "We don't know who could be out in these waters. They could be murderers or thieves. You can never help but be wary out in the sea." Skye also had to confess that she was conflicted, but she said, "When I was out in these waters, I thought I was dead for sure, but then you came and saved me, and I was so grateful, and I can't help but think that if someone else was in that place, they'd want to be saved too. So I really think that we should go up and see what they want, at least. And, well, we have to remember the thing we learned at the Island of Giants, that we should help strangers, welcome them, and do things for them sometimes without any expectation of a reward." Well, Roger quickly agreed. He had to admit he couldn't have imagined sailing these seas without Skye. But they started heading towards the boat. And as they drew closer and closer, Roger began to doubt his own eyes, for he could swear that there was a hare and a tortoise on that boat. And he thought to himself maybe it was the same hare and tortoise from Aesop's fables, and chuckled. But as they got closer and closer, he realized that he was right. It was a hare and tortoise on that boat. And the hare saw them, and he hopped up onto a tarp, and they realized that he only had one leg, a peg leg, and he began tapping it. He didn't seem to mind it at all. He seemed to be a quite joyful hare, even without one leg. "Well there," said the hare. "Hello, my name's Trevor, and this is my friend Timothy, and we've been sailing these high seas, and... Are you a dog? And are you a cat? Well, I've never seen such a thing. A cat and a dog sailing the ocean together. What is the world coming to? It's gone mad." But anyways, the hare soon got the boats right up to Roger's, and they hooked up, and Trevor began hopping around the boat. Actually, Skye and Roger both thought the hare was quite a silly fellow, and they couldn't help but smile. "Look at this boat," said the hare. "Why, there's holes all in the mast, and, ooh, this deck, it's filthy. Oh, you need to scrub it up immediately." And Timothy was coming on, but he accidentally tumbled a little bit as he fell over the side. "Oh, Trevor," said Timothy, "now you really need to be polite to these people. We don't even know them. I'm sorry for my friend. We are traveling magicians, and we were hoping to perform a show and get some money. If you all wouldn't mind seeing a show." Roger and Skye looked at each other, and they agreed that it would be a good idea to see a show. Roger actually likes shows quite a lot, so he was thrilled by this idea. But they gave them some money, and so the hare put on the most marvelous show. Oh, there were so many marvelous, fantastical, spectacular things to see. The hare made objects disappear right in front of their eyes. He made objects levitate and even flew up above the sea himself. And then he shot fireworks straight out of his ears. And Roger had no idea how he managed to do that. But eventually they both began to get tired, and they all decided that was well enough, certainly worth the money. And they sat on board and talked to each other, and Roger was beginning to wonder exactly why it was they were out in that ocean, the two of them. He couldn't imagine they were just out there to perform magic, and he sort of drifted the conversation to it. And finally Trevor said, "Well, my friend Timothy here is looking for his parents. We've been out in these waters for quite some time, and apparently there's a turtle nesting spot over here where all the turtles like to rest." And Skye said, "Oh my goodness, Timothy, you lost your parents?" And Timothy nodded his head. "I was out on the boat, on the beach, as a little baby in my egg, And my mother just left me there underneath the sand with my brothers and sisters. And we all came out looking for mother, and then a huge seagull came down and it started attacking us, but luckily I managed to get away. And I swam out here, and I've been searching for my mother for so long. But finally I managed to find Trevor, and the two of us are going on a quest. But we had to do something to make money and get food, so we decided to put on magic shows since Trevor's quite a gifted magician. And, Roger said, "Well, I can tell an adventure when I see one. We will help you find your mother." And at this, they were both very excited, and they soon came to the island where apparently the beach where the turtle nesting spot was near, and they decided they'd rest there at the island before they went down and searched for Timothy's mother. But as they were sitting there, Roger began to tell the stories that they had encountered, all the giants and the old man in the lighthouse, and Trevor and Timothy listened with wide mouths, and Timothy shared the story of how he went to a bar filled with talking animals of all kinds, and how he fought off seagulls. And the stories were shared into in it till the fire went out and the stars were shining in the sky. And Trevor suggested that they all rest. They needed to have their strength to go and see Timothy's mother for the first time. Well, they lay down and they went to sleep, but one of them couldn't quite fall asleep. Timothy was so excited about seeing his mother that he sat there and he looked up at the stars and he watched as Trevor and Roger and Sky slept. Although Sky wasn't quite asleep, she never really was truly asleep. She was a kind of a guard dog in that way. She was always alert. But as he sat there, he heard a noise, the breaking of branches, and he looked up and he saw creatures moving fast. They were like a blur, like shadows in the starlight. He thought to himself that he must be imagining things. Shadows didn't move around. They didn't have lives of their own. They kept getting closer and closer, and Timothy watched, and finally he let out a scream. Ah! And everyone jumped up, but it was too late, for the shadows had grabbed Roger, and they had grabbed Sky. But Trevor jumped up and began moving around fast, and the shadows couldn't catch him. And as Timothy watched all these shadows, as he hid away in his shell, he realized that they were hares like Trevor. And they were all chasing after Trevor, and Trevor was laughing. "Ha ha ha ha! You can't take one of us hares from the north. Come on, come on!" And he would dart right up to them, and then he would dart away, and they would be trying to catch him. Well, all the hares were getting very angry, and they said, "Let's just take some of our prisoners. I thought I heard another voice around here. This voice doesn't sound like that scream." But they all began to doubt that, and they headed off. Well, anyways, a few of the hares actually did go and chase Trevor. And they chased him all around the island. He jumped over streams and across, and he ran all around the island over and over again. But those hares couldn't catch him, and eventually got tired out and had to go back to their camp. And you're probably wondering what happened to Timothy. Well, all those hares thought to themselves that it was a very odd stone that was sitting there, but that was all it was, a stone, for Timothy had been very smart and hid away in his shell. And once he was sure the coast was clear, he promised himself that he was going to go save his new friends, Roger and Sky. So he began heading forward. Well, Roger and Sky were at that moment in the camp, and they had been tied up, and the rabbits were all talking amongst themselves, and finally the leader came up. The leader was an old hare named Skull, and he looked at the two of them, and he said, "Well, so you shall be our sacrifice to the man in gray. And, Roger and, Sky looked at each other, and Roger said, The man in gray? Who is the man in gray? And, Sky said, Oh, surely you know the stories of the man in black, gray, and white. And Roger said, Well, I do have an inkling, but I think they've got the wrong idea about the man in gray. I don't think he accepts sacrifices. But the hares were all talking amongst themselves, getting ready to give their sacrifice to the man in gray, and the leader, Skull, assured them, Don't you worry. The man in gray will be merciful to you. He will link you to an even more chaotic realm than this one, a realm where all laws of science are broken, and you shall be in the halls of the divine. For the man in gray is good, better than his brother, that foolish man in black, who desires only order. Well, they were all talking amongst themselves, getting ready for this big event. And then Roger heard a voice behind him. Hey there, cat. And Roger said, Trevor, is that you? Yes, said Trevor. I'm very fast. I've been running around this island miles and miles, and they haven't catched me, and they won't catch me. But we gotta be quick. I've devised a plan on helping you out. We will convince them that you all know the man in gray. And Roger only shook his head. How could you possibly make them believe that? Sky said, Well, it's about our only chance. So, all Roger could do was shrug his shoulders and think to himself that he was almost certain to die. But the hare began racing back to the boat, and as he ran forward, he ran across Timothy, and he stopped. Timothy! Roger and Sky have been taken by those mad hares. We got some work to do. And Timothy said, Oh, I suppose you can't really blame them. You know, they just don't understand how the world works. And Trevor nodded his head. Yes, let's head on back. So they both headed back, and they began to get out supplies and all these sort of magic tricks and things. And they went back to the camp, and the Roger and Sky had already been tied up, and the fire was being burnt, and all the hares were screaming about the man in gray and how he was soon to arrive in that campsite. But as they were being tied up, and as the fire was building up around them, the hares all heard a voice. What? What are you doing to my welcome friends? The hares all looked around, for Trevor was speaking out of a invention that he had created of his own, a sort of a megaphone. It amplified his voice, and he was pretending to be the man in gray. You let them go, said the voice. And the old Skull said, That is not the man in gray, for the man in gray can be everywhere all at once. And Trevor, who actually was quite a skilled ventriloquist, began to speak everywhere at once the moment he heard this. For his ears were quite good. He could hear everything Skull was saying, even over the roar of the fire. Let them go. I am here and I am everywhere. I am the man in gray. Free Roger and Sky. Well, the old hare Skull began to get nervous. And he said, All right, he might be here. I don't know. All right, we'll think of something. Well, at that moment, a big fog came in, for Trevor also had a machine that could make fog. The fog began to surround them, and the old Skull said, Okay, let them go, my friends. Well, anyways, both Roger and Sky were let go, and the hares all began talking amongst themselves, and they were thinking about killing them anyways, for they weren't certain that this really was the entity, the man in gray. But then Trevor had a wonderful idea in his head. He happened to know that an equinox was happening around that time. It was going to happen the next day, and he said, "I will show you one more trick that I have. I will make the sun disappear from the daytime sky." And when they all heard this, they decided that the best thing to do was to wait and see. And as Trevor was talking, he also said, "And there are friends coming in, friends of mine, a hare and a tortoise, and you should welcome them as guests." And the hares all agreed that they would to the man in gray. Even the skull was, of course, becoming convinced. But both Trevor and Timothy came out, and they were indeed welcomed as guests and given fruit and plenty of things to eat. But Roger was rather nervous about the equinox. "Sometimes those things aren't reliable, Trevor. I know that you're good at astrology and all, but we have to be careful with this." But Trevor assured him, "I know the stars like I do the front of my paw. Not this one, though, the one that's now a peg. It will be fine." And Roger could only shrug his shoulders again. He was really going to have to trust his friends. But the next day arrived, and they were all standing around, and they were looking up into the sky, and sure enough, all at once, everything went black. And it was the very equinox that Trevor had predicted. And the old wise hare Skull, when he saw this, immediately knew that this was something far greater than himself, and he said, "Oh, it is the man in gray. He is here. He has arrived. Oh, let them go, let them all go, let them do what they wish, for it is the man in gray's will. I am so sorry if I have even upset you." And Trevor promised him that there was no need to worry. Just a simple mistake, just a simple mistake. "And I can't help but notice that you all happen to—" "Yes," he said, "now that I've gotten a closer look at you, you all are hares from the north." And the old wise Skull said, "Why, yes, it's true. We came from another place. This north that you speak of, I suppose, might be it, although it's lost to legend." "Well," said Trevor, "that means that you and I are family. And I think I found myself a family even before Timothy did, which I never would have expected in a million years. I've been searching these waters for so long, for one, and, well, here you all are." And Trevor gave them all a big hug, and they all were very happy to, and especially, of course, Trevor, for being reunited with their family. But, of course, there was still the matter of Timothy, and Roger went up to him and said, Don't worry, we'll find your mother." And Timothy said, I certainly hope so." But as they all stood there and they were celebrating and having a great party, and even fireworks were shooting off, Roger looked in the distance in the woods, and he noticed something. There was a man in gray standing there. But the moment that he looked at him, he disappeared. He seemed to vanish off into the trees. And Roger wondered to himself if there might be more to the hare's story than even they knew. But then, well, whoever really knows?